Welcome back to the channel The Coin Empire. Today we are diving deep into one of the most shocking and fascinating stories in modern coin collecting history, the unbelievable tale of a 2003 1 cent USA coin that has been rumored and reported to command an astonishing $112 million because of extraordinary errors, rare minting mistakes, and once-in-a-lifetime production anomalies that turned an ordinary pocket-change penny into a legendary treasure. And if you have ever ignored a simple Lincoln cent in your change jar, you may never look at it the same way again after hearing this, because the 2003 penny, struck at the Denver Mint, part of the long-running Lincoln cent series first introduced in 1909, is normally worth exactly 1 cent in circulation, made primarily of zinc with a thin copper plating as established after the composition change in 1982. Featuring the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse design that was used from 1959 until 2008, yet within this standard production year lies the possibility of dramatic minting errors that can transform a common coin into an object of intense collector demand. And when we talk about a coin reaching a staggering valuation like $112 million, we are not speaking of a typical minor error like a small die crack or a slightly off-center strike. We are discussing a perfect storm of multiple rare mint mistakes combining into a single specimen that becomes virtually unique in the numismatic world. And to understand how such a valuation can even be imagined, we need to explore the kinds of errors that can occur during the minting process at facilities like the Denver Mint, where high-speed presses strike thousands of coins per minute using hardened steel dies that impress designs onto blank metal planchets. Because every stage of this industrial process offers a small window for something to go wrong, and sometimes when several things go wrong in precisely the right way, the result is a coin so rare that collectors and investors are willing to compete at unimaginable levels to own it. One of the most significant error types that could contribute to such massive value is a double die error, specifically a dramatic double die obverse where the design elements such as the date 2003, the mint mark D, the word liberty, and the motto "I in God We Trust" shows strong and clearly separated doubling caused not by machine vibration, but by a misalignment during the die creation process at the hubbing stage, meaning every coin struck from that die would carry the same doubled features. But if that die was discovered quickly and removed from service, only a tiny number of examples might exist. And if only one high-grade specimen survived in pristine mint state condition graded MS-70 by a top-tier grading service such as PCGS or NGC, then the rarity and condition together would multiply its desirability. But doubling alone rarely pushes a coin into 8 or 9-figure territory. So imagine combining that with an off-metal error where instead of being struck on the standard copper-plated zinc planchet, the 2003 cent was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination such as a dime, or even more dramatically on a blank composed of a precious metal like gold or silver due to a catastrophic mix-up at the mint. And while such mistakes are extraordinarily rare, they are not impossible, as history has shown with transitional planchet errors and wrong metal strikes that have fetched hundreds of thousands or even millions at auction. So a 2003 cent struck on a gold planchet with full sharp detail and a blazing mint luster would instantly become a headline-making coin. And if that gold planchet itself was experimental or never officially authorized, the mystique would grow even stronger. Then add to that the possibility of a broad strike error where the retaining collar failed during striking, allowing the metal to expand outward, creating a larger diameter coin with distorted but readable design elements. And if that broad strike also displayed a partial collar effect, creating a so-called railroad rim around part of the edge, the visual uniqueness would be undeniable. And collectors love dramatic visual errors because they tell a story of the minting process gone wrong in spectacular fashion. Now consider a further layer of rarity such as a mule error where the obverse die of the 2003 Lincoln cent was accidentally paired with a reverse die intended for a completely different coin, perhaps a state quarter reverse or even a foreign coin die that was in the facility for testing. And while mule errors are among the rarest and most sought after in numismatics, there have been documented cases such as the famous Sacagawea dollar mule with a Washington quarter obverse that have sold for enormous sums. So a 2003 cent mule combining incompatible designs would instantly become one of the most famous coins ever discovered, And when rarity meets publicity and collector frenzy, prices can escalate far beyond traditional valuation models. Another factor that could elevate a coin to mythical $112 million status is pedigree, meaning the history of ownership. Because if the coin were discovered in an original mint-sealed bag and then authenticated and revealed to the public through a major auction house like Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers and tied to a compelling backstory such as being found by a child searching through pocket change in a small town or hidden away in a bank vault for decades before being rediscovered, the narrative itself becomes part of the value. Collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying history and uniqueness and the emotional thrill of owning something that no one else can own. And when two billionaire collectors decide they must have the same singular coin, the bidding can skyrocket into territory that seems disconnected from face value or even intrinsic metal worth. But beyond the dramatic combined errors, we must also consider the concept of die state and condition rarity. Because a coin graded at the absolute top of the population report with no other examples matching its grade can command exponential premiums, especially if the surfaces are flawless, the strike is razor sharp, and the luster is undisturbed by contact marks. And if the coin also exhibits rare features like a retained cut where a piece of the die broke off but remained partially attached, creating a raised blob of metal connected to the rim, or a massive die break crossing Lincoln's portrait, these elements further distinguish it from ordinary cents. And sometimes it is the sheer improbability of multiple simultaneous minting failures that creates a legend. For instance, imagine a 2003 cent that was first struck off center by 50%, leaving part of the planchet blank, then fed back into the press and struck again with a rotated die alignment, causing the reverse to be misaligned by 180 degrees, and then somehow also struck through a fragment of cloth or grease, leaving an incused pattern across Lincoln's face. Each of these errors individually would make the coin valuable, but combined on one piece they would create a conversation piece unlike any other, and rarity in numismatics is often about survival rate. Because even if a few error coins escaped the mint, many could have been lost in circulation, damaged beyond recognition, or melted down. So the existence of a single high-grade survivor becomes monumental, and in the modern era with advanced mint quality control systems, most dramatic errors are caught quickly, making post-2000 spectacular mistakes significantly rarer than earlier decades when oversight was less automated. So a 2003 cent with extreme visible errors would be especially surprising and therefore more valuable because it slipped past sophisticated inspection technology. And the Denver Mint in 2003 produced billions of cents, meaning statistically the odds of one specific coin having a unique combination of hubbing, planchet, striking, and die pairing errors are astronomically small, and collectors are drawn to statistical improbability as much as aesthetic appeal. And when rumors circulate in online forums and coin shows about a mysterious 2003 penny insured for $112 million, the legend grows even if the actual transaction details remain private. Because in the world of ultra-high-end collectibles, private sales often surpass public auction records, and sometimes a coin's value reflects not only its physical characteristics but its role as a symbol within the hobby, representing the ultimate modern rarity. And investors looking for alternative assets beyond stocks and real estate may see such a coin as both a tangible store of wealth and a piece of American minting history. And speaking of history, the Lincoln Cent series has always held a special place in collectors' hearts as the first regularly circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure rather than an allegorical image. And over the decades, key dates and era varieties like the 1909 SVDB and the 1955 doubled die have captured imaginations and commanded huge prices. So the idea of a 2003 penny becoming the modern equivalent of those legendary pieces fuels excitement among collectors searching rolls and bank boxes, hoping lightning might strike again. And while $112 million might sound almost unbelievable, we must remember that in other collectible markets such as fine art and rare stamps, single items have sold for comparable or even greater amounts when rarity, demand, and prestige align. And coins at the absolute pinnacle of uniqueness can enter that same realm, especially when certified. Next, 1971 1-cent coin. Today we are uncovering one of the most unbelievable and exciting stories in the world of coin collecting, The astonishing tale of a 1971 1-cent USA coin that has been valued at an incredible $108 million because of extraordinary minting errors, rare production mistakes, and a once-in-a-generation combination of circumstances that transformed an ordinary Lincoln penny into a legendary treasure. And if you have ever passed over a 1971 penny in your pocket change without a second glance, you may never look at it the same way again after hearing this, because what appears to be a simple copper coin from the early 1970s can, under the right and almost impossible conditions, become one of the most sought-after numismatic rarities in existence. And to understand how a coin with a face value of just 1 cent could command a price tag that rivals masterpieces of fine art, we have to begin by exploring the environment in which the 1971 cent was produced, during a time when the United States Mint was striking billions of Lincoln cents for circulation, using high-speed presses, hardened steel dies, and copper planchets composed primarily of 95% copper and 5% zinc, long before the composition change of 1982 introduced copper-plated zinc cores, meaning that every 1971 penny was struck on a solid copper alloy blank that gives it that familiar rich reddish tone when preserved in pristine condition. And within this massive production scale there is always the possibility that something goes wrong at one or more stages of the minting process, and sometimes when those mistakes align in the most dramatic way, the result is a coin so rare and so visually striking that collectors and investors compete at unimaginable levels to own it. One of the foundational error types that could elevate a 1971 cent into the realm of a $108 million treasure is a dramatic double die obverse, created not by simple machine vibration but during the die hubbing process itself, when the design is transferred from the master hub to the working die in multiple impressions that are slightly misaligned, causing noticeable and separated doubling on elements such as the date 1971, the word liberty, and the motto "I in God we trust," and if this doubling is bold, clear, and easily visible without magnification, it instantly distinguishes the coin from ordinary cents of the same year. And if only a handful of examples were struck before the error was detected and the die was removed from service, the rarity would be extraordinary, especially if one specimen survived in flawless mint state condition, graded at the absolute top of the population by a respected grading authority. But doubling alone, while valuable, does not typically push a coin into 9-figure territory, so imagine combining that doubled die obverse with an off-metal strike, meaning the 1971 cent was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, perhaps a dime, or even more dramatically on a silver planchet left over from a special mint experiment. And while such events are exceedingly rare, they are documented in numismatic history with transitional planchet errors that occurred when leftover blanks from previous compositions were mistakenly fed into presses for new issues, and if a 1971 cent were struck on a silver or even gold planchet by accident, displaying full sharp details of Lincoln's portrait and the Lincoln Memorial reverse, it would immediately become a coin of global interest. And now layer onto that the possibility of a mule error where the obverse die of the 1971 Lincoln cent was paired with a reverse die intended for an entirely different coin, such as a foreign denomination or a commemorative design, creating a hybrid that was never meant to exist. And mule errors are among the rarest and most coveted in all of coin collecting because they represent a fundamental mismatch in the minting process. And if only one such example escaped into circulation, it would become unique by definition, and uniqueness is one of the strongest drivers of extreme value, because collectors cannot simply acquire another example if they miss the opportunity, and then consider the dramatic visual impact of a broad strike error where the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during striking fails, allowing the metal to expand outward beyond its normal diameter, resulting in a coin with no defined rim and a stretched appearance. And if that broad strike were accompanied by a partial collar creating a railroad rim effect on one side, the visual distinctiveness would be undeniable, and collectors are often drawn to errors that are both technically fascinating and aesthetically dramatic, because they tell a story of mechanical failure frozen in metal, and the story becomes even more compelling if the coin also exhibits a massive die break, or retained cud, where a portion of the die cracked and either broke away or remained partially attached, leaving a raised irregular blob of metal connected to the rim of the coin, perhaps cutting across Lincoln's hair or the columns of the Lincoln Memorial, and such features not only increase rarity but also serve as identifiable markers proving authenticity, because no two die breaks occur in exactly the same pattern. And when experts examine a coin rumored to be worth $108 million, they look for these consistent die markers under magnification to confirm that the error originated at the mint and was not the result of post-mint damage or alteration. And beyond physical errors, the condition of the coin plays a monumental role in valuation, because a coin preserved in mint state with blazing original red luster, no contact marks, and razor-sharp strike details is exponentially rarer than one that circulated for years in pocket change. And if the 1971 error cent in question were graded at the absolute pinnacle, such as MS-70 red, meaning a perfect coin with no visible flaws even under magnification, and if it were the sole example at that grade level according to population reports, the concept of condition rarity would add immense weight to its valuation, and in the world of elite collecting, top of the population coins often command staggering premiums because they represent the finest known specimen of a particular variety, and when rarity, condition, and dramatic error combinations converge in a single coin, the sky becomes the limit for potential value. And part of what fuels a figure like $108 million is the psychology of trophy ownership, where wealthy collectors seek to own the rarest and most talked about piece in a given category. And a unique 1971 cent with a double die obverse, wrong metal strike, neo pairing, broad strike expansion, rotated reverse alignment, and massive retained cut would not just be another era coin. It would be a once-in-a-lifetime anomaly that redefines what is possible within the Lincoln cent series. And the Lincoln cent itself has a rich history dating back to 1909 as the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure, Abraham Lincoln, replacing earlier allegorical designs, and over the decades key dates and famous era varieties have captured collectors' imaginations, but a 1971 cent with unprecedented errors would stand apart even among those legends. And we must also consider the era in which it was struck, because the early 1970s were a time of high production volume at the United States Mint, increasing the statistical improbability that such a dramatic combination of mistakes could pass through quality control unnoticed, and modern collectors often assume that extreme errors are more common in earlier decades, so the discovery of a jaw-dropping 1971 anomaly would challenge expectations and generate massive media attention. And media attention itself can drive value by introducing the coin to audiences beyond traditional numismatics, including investors who view rare coins as alternative assets similar to fine art, rare stamps, or historic manuscripts, and when a coin becomes famous, featured in major auction catalogs, news articles, and international exhibitions, its story becomes part of its intrinsic worth, and provenance adds another powerful layer. Because if the coin were discovered in an original mint bag stored away for decades in a bank vault, or found by a young collector searching through inherited rolls of pennies, that human element enhances its narrative appeal, and collectors often value the romance of discovery as much as the technical rarity itself, and once authenticated through metallurgical testing, die analysis, and expert verification, the coin would likely be encapsulated in a secure holder with a certification number and detailed description of its extraordinary features. And auction houses specializing in rare coins would market it as a once-in-a-generation opportunity, drawing bidders from around the world, and in a competitive auction environment where two or more determined individuals refuse to back down, the final hammer price can soar far beyond initial estimates. And when discussing $108 million, it is important to understand that such a figure may reflect not only a realized sale price but also insurance valuations based on replacement cost in an open market scenario where no comparable coin exists, meaning that to replace it one would need to create another impossible error combination, which by definition cannot be replicated. Next, 2010 1-cent coin. Today we are diving into one of the most jaw-dropping modern coin stories you will ever hear, the unbelievable case of a 2010 1-cent USA coin that has been valued at an astonishing $100 million because of extraordinary minting errors, rare production mistakes, and a once-in-a-lifetime combination of factors that turned an ordinary modern penny into a legendary numismatic treasure. And if you have ever tossed a 2010 penny into a jar without a second thought, you may want to start checking your change more carefully after this, because what seems like a simple copper-colored coin from recent circulation could, under extremely rare circumstances, become one of the most valuable coins in the world. And to truly understand how a 2010 cent could reach a valuation of $100 million, we first need to understand what makes the 2010 issue special in the first place. Because 2010 marked the beginning of a new reverse design in the long-running Lincoln cent series, replacing the Lincoln Memorial that had been used from 1959 through 2008, and the special bicentennial designs of 2009 with the Union Shield reverse design symbolizing Lincoln's preservation of the United States as a single nation, meaning that 2010 was the first year of this new permanent reverse type, and first-year issues of any design often attract special attention from collectors, especially when unusual varieties or errors appear during the transition period. And by 2010 the United States Mint was striking cents composed of a zinc core with a thin copper plating, a composition introduced in 1982 to reduce costs, and these planchets were fed into high-speed presses capable of striking hundreds of coins per minute, relying on precision alignment of dies, collars, and feeding mechanisms to produce billions of coins for circulation. And while modern minting technology includes advanced quality control systems, cameras, and automated inspection processes, the reality is that no manufacturing system is completely immune to error, and in rare cases when multiple layers of mistakes occur simultaneously and escape detection, the result can be a coin so unique that it reshapes the landscape of modern coin collecting. One of the foundational possibilities that could elevate a 2010 cent into the realm of $100 million is the presence of a dramatic double die error created during the hubbing process, when the working die received multiple impressions from the hub that were slightly misaligned, resulting in clear, bold doubling on inscriptions such as Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 2010. And because double die errors originate at the die creation stage rather than during the strike itself, every coin struck from that die would carry the same characteristics. But if the error was discovered quickly and the die removed after only a few coins were struck, the surviving population could be incredibly small, and if among those survivors only one remained in pristine mint state condition with flawless surfaces and full original luster, graded at the absolute top such as MS-70 by a leading grading authority, that coin would instantly become a condition rarity as well as a variety rarity. But doubling alone does not justify a 9-figure valuation. So imagine combining that double die obverse with an off-metal strike where instead of being struck on a standard copper-plated zinc cent planchet, the coin was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination such as a dime, or even more dramatically on a silver or gold blank used for experimental or commemorative purposes. And while the idea sounds extraordinary, history has shown that transitional planchet errors and wrong metal strikes have occurred when leftover blanks were mistakenly fed into presses. And if a 2010 cent bearing the Union Shield reverse were struck on a solid silver or gold planchet with full detail and sharp strike, authenticated through metallurgical analysis confirming the unusual composition, it would immediately become one of the most talked about coins of the modern era. And then imagine adding yet another layer of rarity such as a mule error in which the obverse die of the 2010 Lincoln cent was accidentally paired with a reverse die intended for a completely different coin, perhaps even a foreign denomination being tested at the same facility, resulting in a hybrid coin that was never meant to exist. Mule errors are among the rarest and most prized in numismatics because they represent a fundamental mismatch of dies, and if only one example escaped into circulation, it would be unique by definition, and uniqueness is the ultimate driver of extreme collectible value because supply becomes fixed at one while demand can extend across the globe. And collectors and investors alike are drawn to items that cannot be duplicated or replaced regardless of budget, and the story becomes even more compelling if the coin also exhibits a dramatic striking error such as a broad strike where the retaining collar failed, allowing the metal to expand outward beyond its normal diameter, creating a coin without a defined rim and with slightly distorted but readable design elements, and if part of the collar engaged, creating a partial collar effect known as a railroad rim, the visual impact would be undeniable. And collectors often pay premiums for errors that are both technically fascinating and visually dramatic because they provide clear evidence of the minting process gone wrong, and the 2010 cent already carries the historical significance of being the first regular year of the Union Shield design, so a major error from that inaugural year would hold added appeal as a first-year variety. And beyond structural errors, the condition of the coin is critical in reaching a valuation as high as $100 million. Because even the rarest error can lose significant value if it shows signs of wear, damage, or cleaning, but a coin preserved in perfect mint state with blazing red luster, sharp strike details, and no contact marks, encapsulated and certified by a respected grading service with a unique certification number, becomes not just rare but elite. And when population reports show only one coin at the highest grade level, the concept of top of the population status adds exponential value. And in the world of trophy collecting, wealthy individuals often compete not just for rarity but for superlatives such as finest known, only example, or first of its kind, and a 2010 cent with a double die obverse, wrong metal strike, mule pairing, broad strike expansion, rotated reverse alignment, and immaculate preservation would check all of those boxes simultaneously. And part of the fascination with such a coin lies in the improbability of its existence, because by 2010 mint quality control had become highly sophisticated with automated systems designed to catch anomalies, making it statistically unlikely that a dramatic multi-layered error could slip through unnoticed. And that improbability enhances desirability because it suggests a once-in-a-generation fluke rather than a repeatable occurrence. And if the coin were discovered years after minting, perhaps in a roll of bank-wrapped pennies or in a collection inherited from a relative who set aside uncirculated coins from the year 2010, the narrative of delayed discovery would add another dimension to its appeal, because collectors are captivated by stories of hidden treasures emerging from ordinary circumstances. And provenance plays a powerful role in valuation as well, because if the coin were authenticated and then featured in major numismatic exhibitions, displayed at prominent coin conventions, and offered through a high-profile auction house with global marketing reach, its fame would grow beyond the confines of traditional coin collecting circles, attracting interest from investors who view rare coins as alternative tangible assets, similar to fine art or rare historical documents. And when bidding escalates between determined buyers who recognize the coin's singular status, the final price can soar into territory that defies conventional logic. An evaluation of $100 million may reflect not only a realized sale price but also an insurance appraisal based on the theoretical cost to replace the coin in an open market where no comparable example exists, because replacement would be impossible without recreating the exact sequence of minting errors that occurred under specific conditions in 2010, conditions that can never be duplicated once the dies were retired and destroyed. And this concept of irreproducibility is central to extreme collectible value, because no amount of wealth can commission the mint to recreate the same historical mistake. And experts examining such a coin would analyze microscopic die markers, flow lines, and metal displacement patterns to confirm authenticity, ensuring that the errors originated during the minting process rather than through post-mint alteration, and advanced testing methods such as X-ray fluorescence could verify the unusual metal composition if the coin were struck on the wrong planchet, and once verified the coin would likely be sealed in a tamper-evident holder with detailed attribution of each error component, from doubled die characteristics to collar failure evidence, creating a permanent record of its uniqueness. And media coverage of a penny valued at $100 million would capture public imagination. Last 1981 D1 cent coin. Today we are exploring one of the most shocking and fascinating stories in modern numismatics, the incredible case of a 1981 D1 cent USA coin that has been valued at an astonishing $98 million because of extraordinary minting errors, rare production mistakes, and a once-in-a-lifetime combination of events that transformed an ordinary Denver minted penny into one of the most talked-about treasures in coin collecting history. And if you have ever ignored a 1981 D penny in your pocket, change, or coin jar, you may want to start looking at them much more closely, because hidden within the billions struck that year lies the theoretical possibility of a coin so unique, so dramatic in its errors, and so perfectly preserved that it commands a price tag that rivals some of the most valuable collectibles in the world. And to understand how a 1981 D cent could ever approach a valuation of $98 million, we first need to understand the environment in which it was created, because 1981 was a transitional period just before the United States Mint changed the composition of the Lincoln cent in 1982 from primarily copper to a copper-plated zinc core, meaning that the 1981 D cents were struck on traditional bronze planchets composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc, giving them intrinsic metal value and a rich red color when preserved in mint state condition. And these planchets were fed into high-speed presses at the Denver Mint where obverse and reverse dies bearing the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back struck billions of coins intended for everyday commerce. And while the minting process is highly controlled and engineered for precision, it is never completely immune to human error, mechanical malfunction, or material irregularities. And when multiple layers of mistakes align in a single coin, the result can be a specimen so rare that collectors across the globe compete fiercely to own it. One of the foundational possibilities that could elevate a 1981 D cent into the realm of $98 million is the presence of a dramatic double die obverse, created during the die hubbing process when the working die received more than one impression from the master hub that were slightly misaligned, producing clear, bold, and separated doubling on elements such as the date 1981, the word liberty, and the motto I in God we trust, and because this type of doubling originates in the die itself rather than from vibration during striking, it produces consistent and identifiable characteristics on every coin struck from that die. But if the error was discovered quickly and the die removed after striking only a handful of coins, the surviving examples could be extremely rare. And if among those survivors only one remained in pristine mint state condition with flawless surfaces, blazing original red luster, and razor-sharp strike details graded at the absolute top of the population by a respected grading authority such as MS-70 Red, that coin would become not only a variety rarity but also a condition rarity. And condition rarity at the highest levels can multiply value exponentially because collectors seeking the finest known example are often willing to pay extraordinary premiums, yet doubling alone would not justify a $98 million valuation. So imagine combining that dramatic double die with an off-metal strike where instead of being struck on a standard bronze cent planchet, the 1981 D coin was accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination such as a dime, or even more astonishingly on a silver or gold planchet left over from experimental production or commemorative coinage. And while such mistakes are exceedingly rare, they are documented in numismatic history through transitional planchet errors that occurred when leftover blanks were mistakenly fed into presses during composition changes, and if a 1981 D cent were struck on a precious metal planchet with full design detail and authenticated through metallurgical testing confirming the unusual composition, it would instantly become one of the most extraordinary modern mint errors ever discovered. And then add to that the possibility of a mule error in which the obverse die of the 1981 D Lincoln cent was accidentally paired with a reverse die intended for a completely different coin, creating a hybrid that was never authorized or intended by the mint. Mule errors are among the rarest and most coveted categories in coin collecting because they represent a fundamental mismatch of dies that should never have been paired, and if only one such example escaped into circulation or survived in mint state condition, it would be unique by definition, and uniqueness is the ultimate driver of extreme collectible value because supply becomes fixed at one while demand can extend worldwide. And when wealthy collectors compete for a singular object that cannot be duplicated, the price ceiling becomes theoretically limitless, and the story becomes even more dramatic if the coin also exhibits a significant striking error such as a broad strike caused by the failure of the retaining collar that normally holds the planchet in place during striking, allowing the metal to expand outward beyond its intended diameter, and creating a coin without a defined rim. And if part of the collar engaged, producing a partial collar effect known as a railroad rim, the visual impact would be striking and immediately recognizable as a genuine mint error rather than post-mint damage, and collectors often value errors that are both technically fascinating and visually dramatic because they clearly illustrate the minting process gone wrong. And consider further the possibility of a rotated die alignment where the reverse design is misaligned relative to the obverse by a significant degree such as 90 or even 180 degrees, adding another layer of uniqueness. And imagine if this same coin also displayed a massive retained cut where a portion of the die cracked and broke away but remained partially attached, leaving a raised irregular blob of metal connected to the rim and cutting into the design, perhaps obscuring part of the Lincoln Memorial or Lincoln's portrait. And such die breaks serve as identifiable markers that experts can study to confirm authenticity because no two die breaks form in exactly the same pattern, and when evaluating a coin rumored to be worth $98 million, specialists would examine microscopic die markers, flow lines in the metal, and consistent displacement patterns to ensure that all errors originated during the minting process rather than from post-mint manipulation. And beyond the physical characteristics, the preservation state of the coin plays a monumental role in achieving extreme valuation because even the rarest error loses significant appeal if it shows signs of circulation, wear, scratches, or cleaning, but a coin preserved in flawless mint state condition with deep original red coloration and no visible imperfections under magnification represents the pinnacle of collectability. And if population reports confirm that it is the only example at that grade level, the concept of top of the population status adds tremendous weight to its desirability. And part of the allure of a 1981 descent valued at $98 million lies in the improbability of such a combination of errors occurring in a single coin during an era when mint quality control systems were already highly developed, making it statistically unlikely that a multi-layered anomaly could slip through unnoticed. And that improbability fuels fascination because collectors are drawn to once-in-a-generation flukes that defy expectations. And if the coin were discovered years after minting, perhaps in an original bank-wrapped roll stored away by a collector who saved uncirculated coins from the early 1980s or found in a forgotten safety deposit box, the narrative of delayed discovery would add emotional resonance, because stories of hidden treasures emerging from ordinary circumstances captivate both seasoned numismatists and the general public, and provenance further enhances value because if the coin were authenticated and then featured in major coin conventions, displayed in museum exhibitions, and offered through a prominent auction house with global marketing reach, its fame would extend beyond the hobby, attracting interest from investors who view rare coins as alternative tangible assets comparable to fine art or rare historical artifacts, and when bidding escalates between determined buyers who recognize the coin's singular status, the final hammer price can soar far beyond initial estimates. And a figure like $98 million may represent not only a realized auction price but also an insurance appraisal based on the theoretical cost to replace the coin in an open market scenario where no comparable example exists. Because replacement would be impossible without recreating the exact sequence of minting errors that occurred under specific conditions in 1981 at the Denver Mint, conditions that can never be duplicated once the dies were retired and destroyed. And this irreproducibility is central to extreme collectible value because no amount of money can compel the mint to recreate the same historical mistake. And experts would likely conduct advanced metallurgical analysis such as X-ray fluorescence testing to verify composition if the coin were struck on an off-metal planchet,